and welcome to this week's edition of Blues Talk, where John, Dave and myself are going to look back over our disappointing defeat to Glasgow, look back at some of the other results over the weekend and look forward to our game at home against Cardiff on Friday evening. Well boys, 12-6 against Glasgow, very poor display really.
Yeah, I don't know whose door to be laying it at really, because everybody looked a bit subpar, nothing you could really put your finger on, but few people shy of tackling and just general malaise. Nobody looked like they were really up for it. Even a couple of the usual suspects, like maybe our back row, didn't look too bad, but some of the backs looked like they didn't know what they were doing in defence. Some of them,
If you're playing a team as good as Glasgow, you really have to be switched on and you have to be on the top of your game. And we weren't, and we paid the price. I mean, it's as simple as that. When you are facing a team like Glasgow, you are a top team. If you're not, making your tackles, like you say, find touch from kicks, from penalties, at least retaining your own ball from scrums, not getting blown out of it in the rucks. You have to be doing these things, and we weren't. We were getting blown out in the rucks. We were missing tackles. We were missing touches. We were having problems in the set piece. And, the result wasn't actually a surprise in terms. Certainly, it wasn't a surprise anyway, but it wasn't
a pleasant surprise in some ways. No. We did better than we deserved to.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, up until Glasgow got that last penalty, we were actually going quite well, considering how badly we were playing. We were still in a chance of robbing it. Actually, we were still in a chance of robbing it until the end. And considering how badly we were playing, that mightn't be a big thing for Glasgow. But then Glasgow were looking to win the match. I don't think they were looking to win bonus points or anything. They just wanted to win because they'd been unlucky against us in the last 3 games they played us again.
Well, if they'd got a kicker, we wouldn't have got a losing bonus point. I mean, I don't know. I mean, kicks between Hogg and
some of
Jackson
Hogg's kicks were absolute skank bags.
Miles wide. Yeah, and they probably deserve to convert at least that try that Jerry Yanatawa, is that right?
Yeah.
Scored.
Nice one.
The one that he scored, they deserve to put that over and rob our bonus point, to be fair. And your man hit the post, Rory Jackson, Rhubarb as they call him. He's was their 3rd kicker on the night and hit the post. Luckily we managed to scramble it away because it could have been. Yeah,
it could have been curtains for us really, because I mean we still got the losing bonus point, and after 3 games with 8 points, which
ain't so bad.
Well, it's not so bad. I mean, if we'd have been given that at the start of the season, after the first 3 months, especially the 3 fixtures that we had.
And those are 3 fixtures that are out of the way now. I mean, however Clonetty have turned out to be, and their game against Dragons was actually a cracker on the same night as ours. I was almost sorry to turn back over to ours at half time because I was watching Dragons and Clonetty. But however, the away match against Clonetty, any game against Ospreys, any away to Glasgow, were considered 3 very difficult matches.
Absolutely,
that we've come out of them with 8 points isn't so bad.
I think the away match in Glasgow is possibly the hardest of the league. I think we said that last week. Even Ravenhill and Thomond Park are not quite as scary. They're just tough, pipe hitting lads who are really up for it every time you play them, and they're kind of a bit on the edge at the breakdown, but they just have a bloody mindedness or something in defence that you just can't. No team seems to be able to get through them. They haven't, interestingly, conceded a try. I just saw a statistic: 300 minutes of rugby, stretching back to whenever last season, that they haven't conceded a single try.
That's fairly impressive, isn't it? Because I mean, we're starting to.
Ulster.
We leaked. I was looking at from last season, and we think we conceded 46 tries, way more than anyone else in the top 6 or 7 in the league. Yeah. I mean, some teams are only around 25, 30 tries, and we let in 46.
We
let in 5.
The Brazil trick.
Yeah. We started horrendously defensively last season. But you have to remember as well, and it's something that slightly gets overlooked. Yes, we've lost Joe Smith, the head coach. We've also lost Joe Schmidt, the defensive coach, which is, there is a change there, and it does take time for new systems to bed in, etc. I don't see what Leinster doing being radically different than what they were doing last season, but still there is going to be a change because Matt O'Connor will have his own way of doing it. But I mean, the thing is, those fixtures are out of the way. We don't have to worry about them again. We don't have to worry about Glasgow for a while yet, anyway. But you'd still like to see a bit of not so much an improvement, but just improved attitude. I thought some of the guys were a bit easy Ozzy, as Andy Gray would say.
Definitely, there were. Not everybody was looking to make a tackle, and they were able to make progress through us far too easy at times. I mean, even for the try, that Yanni try. Yanni Yanatawa, I got it right twice. I think it was Jordy Murphy who he brushed off. Now Jordy went for him. It wasn't like he shirked the tackle or anything, but he just made it. You know, he's a big guy. He's a massive Fijian, I think, loose head prop, and you know, none of the three of us, or even an amalgam of all three of us, was going to stop him. And Jordy Murphy made an attempt at it, but he still, that was, especially so close to our line, that was about 7 or 8 yards he ran in, and there was nobody else there, only Jordy Murphy to stop him. There should have been at least 3 guys. So where were they? What were they doing? You know, and in a lot of the other passages of play, people were run through.
It looked very lackadaisical, I thought.
One thing I've noticed about Leinster over the last couple of seasons is when the team aren't switched on, the defensive line tends to be very passive.
No line speed.
No line speed. They tend to wait for the opposition to come onto them rather than going to the opposition. And they tend to be more concerned with not conceding a penalty than with, you know, actually effecting a tackle and challenging at the ruck. Whether that's a deliberate thing, I don't know. I don't think it can be, because as soon as...
It's a mindset thing.
It's a mindset thing, because as soon as Leinster start playing well, that goes. I mean, that whole attitude disappears. That mindset, as you say, disappears. So, you know, if you see Leinster doing that, you know that they're not quite on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was also it was a costly game for us. I mean, Jennings, who's playing fairly well this season, he looks like he looked bad when we saw him on the TV. I don't know what the prognosis is, but
broken bone in his hand, so
he's out for a couple of weeks anyway.
He could miss the Heineken Cup,
you
know. And Sean O'Brien still not there. I mean, they said pre-season that he was likely to feature in the first 3 games or something, or you know. He's now at this stage unlikely to feature, certainly this week. You'd hope to see him the following week. Otherwise, we're in serious trouble.
Because I heard
no Jennings, no O'Brien.
Yeah, I heard Matt O'Connor talking that I know Driscoll could be back for the match against Cardiff.
That's a fairly certainty at this stage.
Like those guys, it's getting close to the time that they're due back.
Well, they would be back this time. About this time anyway. I mean, we're 2 league games out from the first Heineken Cup game, and that's when the guys start to normally feed in anyway. So, Sean, I don't see been back before. You know, maybe the Munster game, but certainly the Ospreys game. Before that, no, I don't think so. Hopefully we don't get any more injuries. I mean, obviously, as you say, Jennings got an injury. Lottie Takiri took an injury.
I think he's okay though.
Well, we'll see. It might be a week too soon for him. You never know.
But it seems to be one for Luke, because again, O'Connor was saying today he's not going to be featuring next weekend.
Well, I was looking at pictures of the guys training in Carton House, and Luke was sitting it out. Fergus McFadden was sitting it out, and worryingly Brian O'Driscoll was also sitting it out. Now whether that's just protecting him because he's at this stage of his career, he doesn't actually need to do all the training, etc, so they can protect him from certain sections of the training, I don't know. But it is quite worrying. And the other worrying thing from an Irish point of view was that Conor Murray was wearing a boot on the sideline, which is kind of not good to see coming into the autumn internationals, but hopefully it's just a precaution. But so it's I mean, we're getting a bit stretched now in terms of resources. The thing is, if we have Rob Kearney back, you know, if Darragh Fanning comes back, I mean, we don't know what kind of injury he has. Apparently, it was the day of the game kind of thing, or the day before the game, which I thought was strangely.
Was it an excuse to get?
I thought it was a bit of a diplomatic flu myself. You know, so I mean, we're a bit stretched in the back 3 at the moment. If all the guys who we think are out injured.
Yeah, well, they haven't mentioned McFadden.
No,
hasn't been mentioned at all. I know he was in Carton House, but I didn't see any of the pictures. So the fact that he's not even mentioned though is a bit worrying. If Fitz isn't going to be there either, if Takiri happened to be out, you're looking at Fanning and Dave Kearney on the wings. Luckily, we've Rob Kearney back. We still don't have Kirshner and won't until just before the Ospreys game. So yeah, we're
But bare bones, really.
Skating on thin
Darren
ice, as they
Hudson.
say.
Darren Hudson's
yeah,
out as well.
yeah.
I don't know how long he's out for, but he did a. What did he do? Was that a hamstring?
It was a hammer, yeah.
Yeah.
We might be seeing Sam Coughlin-Murray getting an elevation at least to the bench anyway.
Yeah. He seemed to be next in line.
Yeah. He was on the bench for the Clonethy game, wasn't he?
Right,
yeah.
Mm.
So
Well, anyway, whatever about our woes against Glasgow, there was some good news for the Pro 12, and that was that the two Italian teams got their first set of victories, their brace of victories, and Zebra, came up trumps against probably a very weak Cardiff team.
Yeah.
it wasn't that weak a Cardiff team.
Well, how strong is any Cardiff team?
Well,
really?
how mentally strong is any
Mentally
Cardiff
strong,
team? I
yeah.
think, yeah.
But there was also some whispering about them having 16 men on, where they put on a front rower when they were down.
It would have
14
been
men.
15 is the
Sorry, yeah.
potential, but it was for one phase of play, so it's
Nobody's contesting it.
nobody's contesting. I mean, that happened before. I think it was Ospreys against Leicester. I'm not sure if that's the
Was.
right match. Ospreys were involved anyway.
Was your man? Was it Ricky January or something like
Yeah,
that?
it was contested, and the ERC decided that
Burn.
because it was one phase of play, it didn't have a material effect on the game. Although they did fine the Ospreys, of course, for not running the ship correctly, as it were.
Yeah.
But so for one phase of play, it's not really going to have a material effect on the game unless the guy goes up and scores or something. But don't let that overshadow what I mean. For an Italian team to go away and win against one of the premier clubs of Europe, I mean, because Cardiff are one of the great names of European rugby.
Absolutely.
In the Cardiff Arms Park, one of the most evocative names in world rugby.
Yeah.
It's fantastic for them,
Right.
and you could tell. I
Might
know
open the floodgates for them too.
It might as well, because, I mean,
But they were there and thereabouts last year. I think they had 9 losing bonus points.
Yes. maybe that's all they needed was that little screw turn in their heads, to
And they
let them know they can win these
And
games.
they put it up to Munster the previous week. I know Munster came back and did win the game, but they were winning 18-9 at half time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who's got them in the Heineken Cup?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you.
Wouldn't be Saracens or anything like that.
Oh, I'd
It'd be
hope
great
it.
to
Oh,
see them.
I'd love it. I would. Another football reference. I'd
Kevin
love it if they beat them.
Keegan.
I'd love it. But I mean, you could tell by the goodwill to Zebre. I know you're not a denizen of social media, but I am, and my Twitter timeline was filled on that night with people talking about Zebre. It was all anyone was talking about on Twitter in terms of rugby, anyway. So it was great for them, and it was it was a timely blow delivered. I think is the
Yeah, I mean, just as you say, it was what timing that they could get that, especially with the shenanigans that are going on with the Heineken Cup.
last couple of days have not been good for McCafferty, so they haven't.
Depressing.
It's been depressing for rugby in Europe. No, you're right.
Yeah.
It's very depressing to see kind of the family split wide open and all the dirty laundry being aired. But you can't make an omelette without breaking some eggs. And this is an omelette that needs to be made. I mean, something has to be done. There are a number of problems with rugby. Governance is one of them. The global season is another. To a certain extent, this could cure two of the issues in one. Because one of the problems is that we have a very congested Northern Hemisphere season. If you take one of the competitions out, no matter how great that competition is, it does free up space for the other competitions to breathe. Then you reinsert the competition around your restructuring. It might be an opportunity in disguise, but it's very well disguised if it is.
So are you going down the road that there isn't going to be a European competition next season, or?
I would not be surprised if there were not.
Did you see today there was an announcement by the French Federation that they definitely will not sanction French clubs playing in it.
And there's something to do with French law where there's a lot of things actually to do with French law, the way they don't own their own stadiums.
French law is very interesting. I'm not going to suggest that it was in part, it's, to do down rugby league in France. One of the laws that was brought in was that in order to play a sport, you have to be sanctioned by your organising body. And in the case of rugby, obviously, that's the FF4. So no game of rugby can take part in France unless the FF4 sanctions it. It's as simple as that. And that's not just sporting law, it's French law. The problem with that is very few French teams actually own their own stadia. Most of the stadia are civic municipal stadiums and civic stadiums owned by the local department.
Even if they did own it, they could move, just like Toulouse do. They move from one stadium to another stadium when they want to play big matches, or as we saw in the past, Stade Francais moving to the Stade de France.
Yeah, but neither of those are owned by Stade Francais. I don't think either of the stadiums. The Ernest Vallon may be owned by
Yeah,
Toulouse,
it is, yeah.
but the Municipal isn't. Toulon
Soccer
Stadium
stadium.
isn't owned by Toulon. It's owned by the city of Toulon. There are hundreds, almost every club in the top 14. There's very few own their own stadium, which makes things very difficult for them as well. But obviously, the French Federation came out and said we're not sanctioning the competition. Gozé came out and said, "Well, we're still going to play in it anyway."
don't care,
But he realised he couldn't, and now he's changed his tune and said, "Well, if we can't play in our competition, we're not going to play in any competition."
yeah.
Which leads me to believe that we could be in trouble. He's saying they're not going to go to arbitration. He says they're not going to be.
They're not even going to talk.
They're not even going to talk about it. Now, apparently, they've been instructed to do so by the FFR, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But if there isn't, I mean, what you have to do is you have to, life deals you lemons. You have to make lemonade out of
But
it.
there's ramifications then, Dave, for Irish rugby. I mean,
It's
like
huge
whatever about looking
ramifications.
over and being the moral guardians and
There's massive
Yeah,
ramifications.
but what is like Sean O'Brien, Jamie Heath et al. Are going to be out of contract? Are they going to say, well, what, there's nothing keeping me here now. The Heineken Cup's gone. Am I going to be interested in playing in a Pro 12 game, or I can go to France and take Mega Wanga?
Big lot of money.
Well, you see, the thing is, what you have to do then is you have to try and work out a way of making the Pro 12 more attractive, because are they the only thing then is the difference is to a certain extent the money, and I don't blame professional sportsmen for following the money. I mean, that's why they're called professional sportsmen. You got to make the Pro 12 a more attractive league than the top 14. I mean, that's the only way around it.
That's the
You-
look at that, Dave.
I know, yeah.
In terms of money, anyway.
Well, let's face it, it's not that difficult to put on a more attractive game than a top 14
That's-
game.
Well, yeah,
I mean, we
but
could
not
probably
in
manage it.
dispute.
Yeah.
no, but the thing is, though, if you look at in Wales, all their players are drifting across, and they have been for the last 4 or 5
Wales
years.
are in an awful lot worse position than we are. So are Scotland. Italy are not so bad financially. They're actually paying the Celtic League.
Italy
a lot
apparently
of money.
their union is apparently quite well off.
Yeah, but you see, the Welsh and the Scottish unions are still massively in hock because of the two
Because of the
stadiums
stadium,
that they
yeah.
bought.
Well, my solution would fix
And
those problems.
probably our union as well from a few years ago,
My solution would fix all those problems. My solution is to extend the Six Nations to home and away. Use the free weekends for that.
Traditionalists will be up in arms, Dave. No Grand Slam.
Absolutely. Well, it'd still be a Grand Slam. All you have to do is win 9 games or
Okay.
8 games instead of 5.
A very
10
onerous
games.
Grand Slam.
10 games instead. But bring in home and away. That allows you to bring bonus points into the situation.
But then
as
do you
well.
go down the road of the rugby championship, or
Yeah.
where there's just overkill and the matches become so run of the mill
Sterile.
and sterile, like they're just the same teams playing
Yeah.
against each other. It's like football in Scotland; they're just playing each other all the time.
Well, the danger there is they have less teams than us for a start, so there's more familiarity to breed contempt. The other thing is they play one another far too often. I mean, how many times do they play each other now? 4, 3, half a dozen?
The Quad Nations.
Yeah.
Well,
Home and away.
They only play home and away.
Well, they had extended.
They used to play.
They had extended the 3 games at one
Well,
point.
That was when it was a Tri-Nation.
I know, but it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, and the Quad Nations has improved as a result of the restriction and the addition of Argentina to broaden the genetic base, as it were.
To go back to where to the problem with the ERC and the PRL, the problem really is egos at the top of both organisations. Like we're all going to come down on the side of the ERC because that's where we're emotionally invested. We have a very high opinion of the Heineken Cup in Ireland. The rest of Europe may not have quite so high an opinion. They all like it. They all think it's a great competition. But the French in the main prefer their league.
3 out of the 6 kind of take it seriously.
But the point I'm making is that there are problems at the top of the ERC in terms of complacency, in terms of ego. Guys like Jean-Pierre Lux, and just to single him
I was
out.
very disappointed with
So there's
him
guys
using
not
the launch
speaking
of
to
the
each other.
competition yesterday
Yeah.
in France with the
example.
captains of the French representative teams to kind of have a snipe at them. That wasn't the time to do it.
Wasn't classy.
No, it wasn't classy. That wasn't the time. It certainly wasn't a high moral ground position he was taking.
So
And there are issues around the ERC. I mean, it is entirely possible that it can be exploited better financially.
exactly. Do you know what I was going to say? I was going to say, wouldn't it be brilliant if guys like Nigel Ray and Mark McCafferty and all these guys could work their magic and bring in stuff like the BT deal under the auspices or with the approval of the ERC. Now, okay, you'd need a time machine to go back 2 years to get that to happen. But wouldn't it have been great if they could all put their bloody egos aside and talk to each other about the good of the game, which now the ERC are being seen as the people who are protecting the good of the game. But in some ways, they haven't been. If they had really been looking at the good of the game, they would have looked at the French and English grievances a bit earlier.
And especially when their next meeting isn't scheduled till the 27th of October.
But
23rd.
But the thing about it is that I think as soon as McCafferty and the boys signed that deal with BT, they actually didn't want any compromises.
No.
Because if their unstated aim was to get rid of the ERC completely, because only then would they have control to actually execute the BT deal. So when they were in the press saying, oh, they won't talk to us, oh, they won't compromise, there were actually compromises being offered. But no matter if they'd have offered, their wives, including compromises, they still wouldn't have, the PRL wouldn't have settled, because their stated or their unstated aim was just to get rid of the ERC out of European rugby.
I mean, they're saying, people are saying, well, if it's so urgent, why aren't they meeting until the 23rd of October? Well, this mediator has to talk to, 26 clubs and 6 unions, get all their points of views before coming back and starting the mediation process. Do they think it can be done in less than a month? The other side of that is we don't know availability of schedules. For all we know, the reason that it's not been 23rd is because, just to pick a name out of the hat, Peter Wheeler isn't available until the 23rd, and if he's available such a day, I mean, the scheduling of it is an easy brickbat to hit various different people with. We don't know why it's that, and that's the problem. I mean, there's been too much. People have complained about the IRFU not saying enough, or the ERC not saying enough. Now I think the problem is the ERC, or certain people in it are saying too much, or the WRU aren't saying enough, or the SRU aren't saying enough. Isn't it much better not to be doing all your talking in public and actually get stuff sorted out?
Absolutely.
But these guys seem to just negotiate through press release.
But that's because they never wanted a settlement. I'm convinced.
I've no doubt of that.
But isn't it?
Because they would have the same opinion that they wanted to negotiate in private if a settlement was what they wanted. And the reason they're shouting their mouth off in public.
But John, regardless of whether there's egos involved, and they've got their own agendas, but the fact is that they feel that the ERC isn't working on their behalf, and they are a third of the competition, the two, the French and the English, and they have their opinions and their wishes and their point of view have to be taken into consideration too, and it doesn't seem to be. It seems to be all weighted in one side rather than the other.
They have to be taken into consideration. They don't have to be taken as the word of God.
Of course.
And that's the other side of it. I mean, they're saying they haven't taken into consideration the fact that we want to win every year.
I think that's a bit simplistic.
No, but I mean, if you take that, I mean, there's lots of views. You take them into consideration. It doesn't mean you have to.
But but Dave, you're talking about making that Pro 12. Like, just say there's no Heineken Cup next year, and you're saying make the Pro 12 as interesting and as exciting as other leagues. Like, if that's the case, then you have to base the league on some sort of meritocracy, because the way it is, we've seen it in the past where teams just don't give up. Like a couple of years ago, before the World Cup, the Scottish, they just pulled all their players out about 6 weeks before the end of the tournament. You know what I mean? Really didn't give a toss about the league. The thing that we go as season ticket holders, we fork out 200 and 300 400 quid every year, and we go to the match. We give up our weekends. We give up a night of our weekend for 13, 14, 15 weekends in the course of the year, and yet we care passionately about it. We do this program, but the Scottish don't seem to give a monkey's about it.
How is that any different to any other league in the organisation? I mean, I don't know if you watched Racing Metro a couple of weeks ago. They changed 15 players 2 weeks running.
The difference is, Dave, it's not their union telling them to do it. The Scottish union told them not to play any of the Scottish players.
The end result is the same. To the guy standing on the terrace, the guy who turned up expecting to see Johnny Sexton and Jamie Roberts and Mujati and Tonga, they weren't there.
On their away matches. They rest their players on their away matches,
and that's
possibly for the same reason.
And that has been the case in French rugby for 100 years.
Yeah.
That they don't give a monkey's about the away games.
But so what's the difference then? I mean, so they've decided to concede half their games. They're not even going to try. Where's the meritocracy there? I mean, in the history of European rugby, there's only been 2 clubs ever admonished and punished for not trying, and they weren't from England, they weren't from Ireland, they weren't from Wales, and they weren't from Scotland. They were from France. I mean, if you're talking about meritocracy, you have to take all these things into consideration. If you're talking about meritocracy, since Sky signed their deal, the Heineken Cup has been won 4 times by Pro 12 teams. It's been won twice by top 14 teams. It's only been won once by the Aviva Premiership. Where's the meritocracy there? Why do England have 6 teams in it? Surely on merit they should only have 4.
But surely that's the crux of their argument, isn't
The
it?
other thing is that you have to give to
No,
the
the crux of
English.
their argument is that they don't. They keep talking about meritocracy, but they never address. They
Of
never
course.
address it to
But
themselves.
they'll say that the
Of
Irish
course they
teams
don't.
have an unfair advantage. That's what their whole point of their argument
Yeah.
is.
Well, the unfair advantage is by being better.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's the case, all sport is unfair because one team is always going to be better than another.
Well, do you remember, not so long ago, maybe...
Did we
maybe,
hear a
hold on,
word?
maybe in 07, going back that far, the Irish rugby team used to go away, Sullivan used to take them away to training camp in Portugal over Christmas. And they used to schedule the Leinster-Munster match, probably what has grown into one of the biggest fixtures in European rugby. And it was like watching, 2 A-sides against each other. Because all of the internationals, which made the bulk of the international squad, were out of the country on a training camp. And yet the IRFU scheduled, the Celtic League scheduled that fixture for around December so that the teams can all travel. Look at Ulster when they came down a couple of years ago. They sent their B team down over Christmas.
Yeah.
No one is purely innocent
No
in
one
this.
has right on their side, and don't get me wrong, I'm not being an apologist for the PRL because I personally have zero time for them. I'm just being a contrarian here and trying to argue
Because
the devil's
well,
advocate
just
position.
to give the opposite side to what Jason said, when English clubs were actually relatively successful in Europe, we had the same system in Ireland. I mean, we've had the same system in Ireland since 2002, 2003, where players have been withdrawn. We have central planning, guys going off. I mean, Spala is a myth. We don't do Spala. We haven't done Spala since 2007 or 2008.
That's for the Welsh boys.
That's for the Welsh boys. So since when they were winning, they weren't complaining.
Of course.
Now they're not winning, they're complaining. And the problem is that they're talking about meritocracy, they talk about teams withdrawing their players, they talk about various different things. But they never shine the light upon themselves. I mean, we're going to be going over to Northampton Saints at Christmas, right? Or just before Christmas. Do you think the burghers of Northampton would rather see us coming into town? Or maybe 20 or 30 guys from Castres or Brive or Grenoble? Because these are all part of they talk about the finances of the competition. The finances of the competition don't begin and they don't end with the bottom line. If you recall the Good Friday game down in Limerick, when we played Munster, and the various different kind of business representative organisations
the pubs.
they opened the pubs,
the ground.
but they're talking about how much money a big rugby match can bring into a city like Limerick. And I don't think Limerick's any different than Leicester or Northampton because they're all hardcore rugby towns, and they were talking about figures like 20 million euro. Now I thought that was exaggerated, but even if you halved it, 10 million euro is a lot of money to bring into an area. And the PRL aren't thinking about that because they don't care about that. All Nigel Ray cares about is how many diamond encrusted walking canes he can buy at the end of the month. That's all he cares about. He couldn't give a crap if his club even exists tomorrow, as long as he can keep taking money out of it.
Well, his particular club have trouble attracting supporters as it is. I mean, they're don't know what their season ticket holder numbers are, but their gates are not huge. Their core following, no matter whether they were in Watford or in their new place or all the millions of places.
They lost £5.6 million last year.
Sure, they probably more people at the match we played against them in Wembley going to see Tiny Templar than they than actually went to see the rugby.
There's a great example actually of somewhere where the ERC actually has to be held accountable for a mistake it made. Ulster played them. Somebody quoted this on Leicester fans. Ulster played them in quarter final in Twickenham, and they had 30 odd thousand.
I was one of them.
Indeed, you were. They won that game, so they had Toulon. The game was also played in Twickenham, 25,000, because the ERC wouldn't say, listen to what Saracens were saying. If you do cut price tickets, we can get more and more people in. We can fill it, and the ERC wouldn't listen. And that's an example where maybe the ERC should be more responsive to the local needs.
This is the point. There's blame on all sides, and nobody's perfect. And
And,
if
and,
you're running
and,
a
and I'd like
tournament
to
for
apologise for like saying something in favour of Saracens.
Yeah, yeah, Dave. But you know, nobody's perfect, and if you're running a tournament for 18 years, you're bound to be complacent, and you're bound to be in a little bubble. That's the word. Thank you very much. A little bubble where you're being looked after by whoever. Oh, these are the guys. Sky Sports. They always do our TV, and sure, don't they send us off on a junket here? And you know, and I'm not trying to say that they're all corrupt or anything, but there has to be a little bit of comfiness there going on where. Well, sure. Look,
Familiarity, over familiarity.
Didn't they say at the time? Didn't somebody come out and say at the time of the last deal that the better deal just wasn't out there? You know.
Well, when that deal was signed with Sky back in, I think,
what bushes did they bang to get those better deals?
I think when that deal was originally signed with Sky, maybe in 04, 05, BBC.
The current deal is
No. Sorry, when it went back, going back when Sky first decided to broadcast it. The BBC were convinced that they were going to launch an attack on the Six Nations, and so they put a large bid to counteract against the Six Nations. Sky didn't even bother going for it, and they blew Sky. They blew the BBC out of water. The BBC were offering 3 million. Sky came in with 20 odd million to take the rights, and as a result, we went from having maybe 2 matches over the weekend to all the matches, and you know you couldn't complain with Sky's coverage of it now. I mean, it's first rate, especially for us as rugby fans. Will sit there for practically the whole weekend and watch rugby.
And the other thing to remember, I mean, people talk about BT Sport. BT Sports, you know, we've been down this road before with ITV Digital. We've been down this road with Setanta Sports.
I wouldn't have a problem with BT Sport per se.
I have no problem with BT Sport per se, but what I have a problem with is their longevity and their commitment to the sport. You know, they're getting pretty lousy viewing figures. It's
the same though with big owners in France. You know, or Nigel Ryan is like.
Well, there's a Dubai consortium called beIN Sport looking to take on Canal Plus. But I mean, they're talking about 70 odd thousand for a Premiership game, viewing figures on BT Sport Premiership rugby game. Sky are getting 80 odd thousand for a National League One game, and Leinster against Treviso on a Sunday last season got 98,000. But so that shows you. I mean, I don't know where the money for these TV deals is coming from, because it's not coming through traditional routes.
Yeah.
We see the other problem then is, I mean, we're in the rabble and we have this deal with Sky for next season, right, where they're going to show 30 odd games. But at this point in time, there's no terrestrial deal been signed. Now everyone's saying, oh, isn't this Sky deal great for the Rabo, it's going to promote the thing. It's not great. It's a disaster if that's the only TV deal we have, because it's only 30 games.
Bring back Setanta.
Bring back Setanta. Now the problem is, noses in traditional terrestrial broadcasters have been put out of joint by this deal, because Sky have first pick, which means that they're left, you know, spending money to pick up, you know, second ranked games. So it's good. I mean, RTE
but they won't show. So if Leinster play Munster, they can't show the return fixture.
Yeah, but that's already the way it is with RTE and TG Cahir. But it doesn't mean noses aren't put out of joint in RTE by the fact that TG Cahir have first pick on the games.
Yeah, I think they alternate, don't they? In
they do alternate on different weeks, but TG Cahir have always managed to get the one in the Aviva. You know, so. So there's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, there's TV deals are a nightmare to unravel. British subscriber figures are an even bigger nightmare to unravel.
Advertising generally, like if you look at the balance between trying to sell advertising if you've got to pay TV and trying to sell it if it's on national, say ITV in England, to take an example, because the viewership is much larger, therefore the advertising revenue can be larger, whereas the Sky are making their money from subscribers more than advertising.
Anyway, boys, that's going to run and run and run. So
let's get back down off that one.
Yeah. So there was another great result for an Italian team. They beat Munster over in Treviso 29-19. And it was a fairly strong Munster team that they had out as well.
It was Zebo and Earls on the wing.
And they got off to a good start, and then the referee decided to, Leighton Hughes, was it? He decided to flash a few yellow cards. Hodges, sorry.
I know people always get very upset when a referee gives a lot of yellow cards to a team with a history of getting a lot of yellow cards because they're an indisciplined team. We've said it before about Munster. There's too many hotheads on that team, and when you're captained by one of the hottest of the heads, it's no surprise that you're going to be indisciplined. Munster over the last 4 years have been in the top 3 for the or the bottom three, if you like, depending which way you want to look at it, of the Fair Play League in the Pro 12. They're a very ill-disciplined team. It's something they have to get under control. I don't actually think it made a huge amount of difference to the game, because the way the scoring panned out, most of both teams' scores came when there was 15 against 15 or 15 against 14 at most. People are surprised seem to be permanently surprised when Treviso win games at home. Treviso are a very good team who are very hard to beat at home, and always have been.
Yeah. Their second win on a trot against Munster.
Much as people would like to laugh at Munster for losing to an Italian team, it's not actually a laughing matter, because
I think it is at all. No?
No, it's not a surprise. That's what I mean by it. I don't mean it's not a cause for great sorrow. What I mean is, if you look at that Treviso team, that's a Treviso team that, unless you're on your game and you have all your best players out, etc., 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 that's a Treviso team that's well capable of beating anyone, and they could do exactly the same thing to us, and did.
Could easily. They beat us, and we were very lucky to get out of jail last time with
a drop goal.
Johnny and Devon Towner taking a restart, and Johnny getting a dropper just at the death. We burgled the win out of them. But the game itself, I only saw 2 of the yellow cards. I didn't. I saw Stephen Archer's for the high tackle, which was, and Cathal Sheridan's for the obstruction on Berquist, which both of them you'd say. Yeah,
I think they're marginal at best.
They're yellow maybe, but I've seen just a penalty given as well.
I thought the high tackle, like, he actually was ducking. Both of them were ducking.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't.
You're always going to, in a game away from home, you're always going to get punished for that.
Well,
it's happened to us a couple of times.
I wouldn't say though that they were absolutely definite yellows. You know, I'd say that if you say, tell me that's a yellow, I go, yeah, I suppose it is. But it's not, oh my god, that's a yellow.
Yellowish.
It was, kind of greeny yellow.
But if you have the reputation.
Possibly.
And they have the reputation, so.
One thing I'd say about their scrum up against Treviso looked.
The scrum looked very good.
I
was absolutely astonished for a scrum to do so, for Munster scrum to do so well.
In the penalty try, in the penalty try, I noticed when the heads came up at the end, it was Archer, Sherry, and I think Cronin were the 3 in the scrum. Now, you know, Archer got a lot of scoring poured on him.
I certainly never. I'd like to state that I've never porned over Archer.
Should hope so too. He got a lot of scoring poured on him last season, and he did seem to improve during the season, but I was never convinced by him. Seeing like that Treviso scrum was a weapon last season. So seeing him do that to it, I thought.
No, I thought
damn good.
I thought Munster did very well in the scrum. They did very well in set pieces. I mean, you always expect them to do well in the lineup, but they did very well in the scrum as well. And that'll be something that'll give them heart, because obviously,
other things won't.
No, because a lot of what Munster do is based around BJ Bosa, and to know that they have something behind them, it will give them a lot of heart. It's people will talk about this game like something has died in the soul of Munster. They hasn't. They got beaten by a bloody good side. I mean, next.
Yeah. I wanted them to be unbeaten for the simple reason that I wanted us to be the ones that beat.
Yeah, I didn't want anyone else pointing out the flaws.
Yeah, well, they've got 2 out of 3 wins. They're on 10 points, third in the league. You know, they're ahead of us by 2 points.
Yeah, but they've played. Admittedly, we've just said that Treviso are a kicking team, but they've got Dragons at home next week. They've played.
See, Dragons aren't the pushover that they were. I think they're pushing to become the second team in Wales.
You weren't here for this, but when we were when Jim was on and we were previewing the season, we were looking at all the signings that the various Rabo Direct Pro 12 clubs had made. We highlighted the signings that Dragons had made as being the team that had actually done, certainly out of all the Welsh teams, that had done the best business, possibly out of all the Pro 12 teams, in terms of the signings they made. They signed sensible players, players that they needed to fill in gaps.
And they've less Welsh internationals than any other clubs, so they're not going to be shorn of them, for large chunks of the season too. Yeah. And if you think back to maybe 10 years ago when it was just Newport, like, that was a bloody strong team. And they seem to be, really rediscovering that nastiness within them.
Was it Booby? Boobier at centre, and Andy Marinus on the flank. That was a very good Newport team. The thing is, even when Newport Gwent Dragons weren't that good, Rodney Parade's a hard place to go.
I was about to say, it used to be about 06 or so, 05, 06, we couldn't
buy a win.
Well, if you remember, we were playing them in the Heineken Cup, and it was a flood. We were losing, a floodlight
Floodlight
failure.
failure, yeah,
The
saved our
referee
asses.
said to Reggie, "What do you want? Oh, take us off."
Yeah.
And we seem to just manage to scrape out a win at the very end.
But that's, I mean, you add an intimidating venue, and I mean that in the positive sense. I actually like Newport. I mean,
Yeah.
the fans are very, very funny, and Sir John
Yeah.
Lick and the great men for robbing chance off. But an intimidating venue, an improving team. It's going to be hard. We were
Well
talking
done,
about poorly organised or sporting organisations not, being cognizant of local issues and copping themselves on. Pro 12 really should cop themselves on.
Hurling final.
The hurling final is on at the same, or just before that match, and two teams from Munster in the final.
Yeah. And one of them is Cork.
And one of them
Where
is
the match
Cork.
is.
Yeah, where the match is. Now, apparently, the problem is that S4C didn't want to move the game. That's
allegedly it,
what I've heard. But sometimes you just got to have a bit of cop. I mean,
Yeah.
Cork gets.
If it was,
Cork
if it
gets-
was the other way around, and if the GA decided to play a lesser, say a league match, on the day of a Heineken Cup final or a Heineken Cup semi-final between two Irish teams, wouldn't you kind of sneer at the GA a little bit and
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
they've got their stuck in the mud, these
Yeah.
old-fashioned whatever. You know what I mean? And now the shoe's on the other foot, and we're not doing it.
Well, the problem is as well that for Munster rugby, in terms of promoting the game in the province,
Mm.
I mean, there's precious few games in Cork. The ones that are there aren't all that attractive. As it turns out, the Dragons coming over is a lot more attractive fixture than people might have imagined at
Well, I'd
before the
say-
beginning of the season. But now that game has been almost emasculated by the fact that it's up against the behemoth that is a hurling final with two local teams in
Yeah.
it.
I'd say they'll throw it on the big screen before the
Well,
match.
that's the plan. But I mean, how many people are going to be who would go to Musgrave Park are actually going to be in Croker because
People
they're-
who don't have a ticket.
Well, that's true,
People
yeah,
who are going
yeah.
to watch it in the pub might say, "Hey, why don't we go down and watch it in Musgrave Park?"
But there's
Get a crack.
there's going to be 80,000 people.
40,000 from Cork.
You're
There's a
talking
lot of
about,
sporting
you're talking
people
about 60
going.
or 70,000 people from the province of Munster,
Yeah.
and most of them from Cork and Clare, two of the
Hotbeds of
the
rugby.
hotbeds of rugby in Munster. So I mean, it's very unfortunate for the Munster branch. I mean, it's just,
It is.
and it's something like if we're going to castigate PRL, castigate ERC, well then
Give Celtic Rugby.
let's give Celtic Rugby a kick in the knackers as well while we're at it.
Okay.
Well, of course, there was another Irish derby on at the weekend as well. Connacht were beaten by Ulster in Galway. And one thing that stood out for me was Ian Henderson.
Yeah, I was just gonna
Anytime
say
I
that.
watch
So
him,
the
yeah.
backer of a player.
he is going to be a fabulous player.
Yeah, when we first saw him, we thought we want Luke Marshall to be for Leicester. Wouldn't we love to have Luke Marshall? I'd rather have Ian Henderson.
Absolutely. Well, it's we probably have a bit of a gap at 12 and in
Yeah,
the second
yeah,
row.
true.
But, the question of whether he's a 6 or whether he's a second row, I think, like he's listed, for example, as a 6 on Ulster's website, but Anscombe has come out during the week saying I see him as a second row. It's a no-brainer to put him in the second row. The guy is 6'6". He's 21 and he's a big, powerful yoke.
He made one run, and there was about 4 lads hanging off him.
Yeah.
And he
He's-
made about 10, 20 metres.
Well,
He's
Fabulous.
fast enough to play 6, but he's powerful enough to play in the
Well,
second
then
row.
let-
And there's a bajillion guys that can play 6
Well,
in
he
Ireland.
should-
And
You know who his role model should be is Nathan Hines. Nathan Hines is a guy who managed to do both,
yeah,
play 6 and second row at the highest possible level,
yeah.
with no seeming difference in the way he managed both.
And he managed to be 6'7" or 8"
Yeah,
as well
yeah. So
along the way.
I mean, Ian Henderson could, and I mean this as the highest praise, could be the Irish Nathan Hines.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Nathan Hines was an incredible player for us. He was one of the best foreign signings we've ever made.
Having a guy who's able to do both as well
Yeah.
during a game
Yeah.
is a big plus, because you can have 3 locks, if you like, on the field who can
Mm-hmm.
smash people, hit rooks,
Screw up
And-
line out ball.
screw up line, confuse hookers. But you can also change that round and have 2, say move Henderson up into the second row and bring on a small nippy guy
Yeah.
at 6 to change the game completely. Even at international level, that's got to be worthwhile.
Well, he's a wonderful player, and I'd love to have him at Leinster. I really would.
Yeah, I'd kill for him.
Yeah, and he was. The other thing is kind of comparing. Apparently, he can be a bit mentally lazy, sometimes, just in terms of his. Not willfully lazy, just sometimes
So you're
he
going to tell him?
drifts. No. But it was interesting to compare his mental state on Saturday or against Connacht with that of Paddy Jackson, who had another.
He had a,
Well, I thought he
pure
came okay.
attack
He
of
had
the
another.
game.
I was going to say
he
another
got
mixed
better.
day, particularly with the boot.
I think once he got the try, his confidence seems to grow a bit.
He's
again.
very much. That's what I was going to say. He's very much a confidence player. I mean, there's no question. I don't think any of us would have any question that Paddy Jackson, on a skill basis, has everything needed to be a top international out half.
Yeah.
When he's kicking well, he's a very good goal kicker. He's a very good line kicker. He can run a back line. He can break himself. He's a good tackler.
He needs 2 large bottles of putting it all together.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Well,
It's the upper 6 inches.
Well, we spoke last week about Ulster maybe aren't doing him any favours by giving him the responsibility of kicking, because if he misses a few, his head seems to go down a bit and everything seems to go wrong for him. I'm just thinking back to say even the Heineken Cup final, where he was blocked down, where he made the mistake about bringing the ball back into his 22, all these little things, and he was whipped off after 40 minutes. But when things started going right for him, and his line of running for that try was absolutely fabulous.
Oh yeah.
And once he got that try, then his game seemed to come back to him, and he seemed to just banish the demons that he had in the first half.
Well, what players do, I mean, if he goes, I can't understand why they haven't got him on a weekly appointment with Enda McNulty, just sit him down. And what happens is, if you start off badly, you have the tools within yourself. You can do little workshops within your own head and get yourself back on track. Waiting for a good thing to happen in the run of the game is leaving too much to fate. What Ulster need is, if he goes and he has a bad kick, that he has the mental ability or the mental skills, the tools to process it, file it away, and just move on.
Yeah.
Which he doesn't have at the moment, and that's what he needs. If he gets those, it's going to be toss of a coin between him, Madigan, and Sexton for the Irish number 10 jersey.
That leads me on to talking about our match against Cardiff at the weekend, and O'Connor said again that Madigan, because of their injuries and because of the internationals being away, Madigan had to play out of position, shall we say. He wasn't picked at fly half. But now I think he's going to pick him at out half this weekend. Yeah, especially we've only got 2 more matches coming up to the Heineken Cup, and also for Madigan's point of view, to give him some experience and game time at 10 with the autumn internationals coming up.
Well, if he doesn't pick Madigan at 10 this week,
You'll kill
it's
him.
hard. Well, I'll kill him first, but it's hard to see how Madigan's going to mount a challenge for the Heineken Cup start. And to be honest, well and all as Gopperth has been playing, I'm not sure that I want him starting at 10 in the Heineken Cup. He's got a lot of great elements to his game, but he wasn't brilliant on Friday. He didn't, looked a bit tackle shy a couple of times, and went into his shell, I thought, a little bit.
The problem is, though, is, as you say, if we have injuries, you've got to just.
Of course, you've got to
do it.
But if you look at this game, it's a game against Cardiff, who have just been beaten by Zebre. Okay, they've got Warburton coming back. They've got but I would look at this as a game where you can do a bit of experimentation. You have a bit of poetic license. Okay, you've got people on the bench if it's all going wrong, and Sam Warburton is playing like Jonah Lamu, and then you change it. You change things up to win the game. But you can certainly go out to this game looking to try a few things.
If we were playing in the Heineken Cup final tomorrow, there's probably 5 of the back line would change.
Yeah.
Like that would be start. Say you've got Madigan probably be at 10. O'Driscoll will be back in. Kirchner will probably come in at some point. Rob Kearney's only played a little bit match last weekend. And
there's guys as well carrying injuries that, for all we know, are being nursed just to make sure they're 100% right. Yeah. If, as you say, we had a Heineken Cup final at the weekend, you just chuck them in and
I left out
get them fixed
Luke
afterwards.
there and McFadden,
Sean O'Brien,
and there's a whole, and Jamie, and even Keane Healy, he just came on for a little cameo as well.
People said that Kirchner would get pushed to the wing with Rob Kearney there, and that he may or may not make our Heineken Cup 15, that he may be at 23. Now we've got Takiri in there as well in the mix. So if we did have everybody fit, which would be great, you'd have, for wing positions, you'd have McFadden, Dave Kearney, Luke Fitzgerald, Lottie Takiri, and possibly Zane Kirchner. So that's a lot of
Yeah.
very big name players that are.
For me, if everyone's fit, then it's Luke +1, and I don't. I mean, for me, it's because I think he's that good.
But you wonder what diktat Smith will have, or if he'll still, have the same amount of power as maybe Kidney might have, and lean on a provincial coach to say, well, I want to see Rob Kearney at 15.
Well, there was a situation last year where Declan Kidney asked Mark Anscombe to have Paddy Jackson kick rather than Roon Pienaar, because he wanted Jackson kicking.
That,
But I think it was more in the line of a request, and Anscombe found that it was a request he would quite readily accede to, because most of them will. I mean, Declan Kidney wasn't picking it out of the air. It wasn't like he was asking to see Declan Fitzpatrick kick. So, and the only other time I think I can remember that it appeared to me that there was external influence was back in 2004, maybe 2005, when Mick O'Driscoll got dropped for Donnacha O'Callaghan. Mick O'Driscoll was playing really, really, really well. He'd come back from Perpignan, he'd hit the Munster team, he was playing very well. O'Callaghan couldn't get back in, and then suddenly he was back in for no apparent reason. I assumed, and I could be completely wrong, that it was the influence of the Irish coach. But, and even then, that wasn't for a Heineken Cup match.
Well,
I'll give you an example, and look at our team. Nasiwa was shifted to the wing.
That's the classic one I was waiting for you to mention. That.
But you see, to a certain extent, wasn't Nasiwa shifted to the wing, or was that just best use of resources?
Well, there's a point in that as well.
I think it was best use of resources.
You want your best players on the
field. You've got two very, very good fullbacks, right? One of whom is also Nasiwa was a world class fullback.
Absolutely.
He was also a world class winger.
But he was a better winger than Kearney
and
was a
Rob
winger.
Kearney was a world class fullback, but he's not a world class winger. So you're trying to get as many good players on the pitch.
Sean O'Brien is another example. Like you get him in at 7. If you've got Ferris and Heaslip, you're going to put Sean O'Brien at 7. I mean, if you had a different configuration and Sean O'Brien fitted better at 8 or 6, you'd put Sean O'Brien at 8 or 6.
And the other thing as well is that coaches want different things from players than what we necessarily want from them.
Yeah, well, it'll all be to look forward to anyway on the weekend. And thanks very much, lads, and thanks a million for watching. Cheers.